So my name is Sinnaeve and I'm with Barco. And today I wanted to share some thoughts and ideas with you about, I guess, where technology meets architecture and design. You know, I think we've talked a lot in the industry about how can we engage better with architects and designers. And for me, I find that extremely interesting. I've always been passionate about architecture, design, and technology, and so really interested on where they meet and how we can make that benefit our industry. So I guess where it starts, when we joined Azione and we did our press release, we talked about a partnership to serve the affluent residential market. So to me, that's an important context here. So we have a focus on the high net worth individual market, if you will. And when we started looking at this, we started looking at where's the real potential of our industry? How do you define the potential of our industry? And one way that we looked at it was, well, we wonder how many wealthy people there are in the world, and see how we can use that to our benefit. And luckily there's a lot of investment banks, big five firms and people like that do a lot of research on how many high net worth people are there, where are they, what's the level of their wealth, and everything else. So I also have a passion for analytics, so you know, we amused ourselves with really looking into that and trying to understand it, finding the hotspots, etc., etc. I guess long story short, our conclusion was that even though it's a small percentage of the world population, when you look at it in absolute numbers, it's actually a huge group of people. And when you then look at it from the perspective of our industry and what we can do, that's a massive business opportunity for us. And when we then looked at, of course, looking at some of the things that we did, looked at the value of that, and then put those two numbers together, we kind of came to the conclusion that if we look at the business that we do as an industry, and you look at how many potential customers there are, it's a fairly small percentage. You know, and you can say, is it 3%, is it 5%, is it 7%? You know, it doesn't really matter. It certainly isn't 50%, and it certainly isn't 70%. And it also doesn't mean that you need to reach everyone to create significant growth in the industry. So let's say it's 5%. If you could take that to 10%, you could potentially double the size of our industry. And then, as Richard mentioned, it's strongly connected to homes and houses. So if you look at the number of wealthy people, and then you start looking at some of the numbers as to, you know, what's the value of a home, on average, how many homes do high net worth individuals own, you get some interesting numbers as well. So there's some numbers on there, for example, that says of the ultra high net worth individuals in North America, they on average own 2.7 homes that they use themselves, so homes that they live in. I don't know what a 0.7 home looks like, but in any case, that's an interesting number, because if you then take those individuals and you multiply it by the number of homes, that's a huge number of homes that potentially could have these solutions. So then I kind of asked myself, well, why is that? Why does there seem to be a discrepancy there? You know, how can we solve that? And then I looked at a lot of information on the industry as well, and Julie will recognize some of her numbers here. And like I'm sure a lot of you religiously look at the CE Pro report and the state of the industry, and one of the things that we discuss in there regularly is who has the biggest influence on who decides what product goes into an installation. Let's say it's a media room or it's a home theater. Who decides what product actually goes into that room? Now, if we think about what I was talking about before, the really interesting question is probably not what product goes into that home theater, for example. If only 5% of the people that could be investing in it are doing it, then the far more interesting question would be, who decides that a home theater or a media room or a new media art display, for example, goes into a home in the first place? Never mind who gets to execute on it. So, how many minutes?
No, it wasn't you.
That couldn't have been 15 minutes. I know that I can ramble, but you know. So I guess that's the other context. Who actually influences what goes into a home in the first place? And there are no numbers on that, but I would wager that if you then compare the two, that the influence of the homeowner, and especially the influence of the architectural and design community, goes way up, and the influence of us as an industry today goes way down. I think the other element of that is that we have to focus on the experience. And as technology companies, that's sometimes a challenge. You know, I like to say when I look at our company, one of our strengths is that we have, one of our biggest strengths would be that we have some of the best engineers in the world. Our biggest weakness is that we have some of the best engineers in the world, right? Because they like to build technologies, and they build it from a perspective of, if we build it, they will come. Well, apparently 5% of the people come. But what about the other 95%? So we started focusing a lot. It's about everything. It's not about technology Y or technology Z, right? It's about the whole experience. And it actually starts with the experience itself. Like, what content are you passionate about? Like, who cares that you can watch a movie that looks fantastic if you don't like the movie, right? And also, we tend to focus quite narrowly on specific experiences, like we focus on home theater, movies, maybe TV series. We focus a lot less on new opportunities like art and even high-end gaming, which I think is an incredible opportunity going forward if you look at the state of gaming and how it has evolved even in the last 60 days. So that, you know, bringing this all together into a great experience is important. So if we go back then for a second to these architects and designers, my feeling was architects and designers look at technology and they consider it to be a necessary evil. It's not something that helps them, it's something that messes up their design or something that limits their creative vision. So that was kind of my idea, is I think they see it as a necessary evil. And if we don't overcome that as an industry, then we can't unlock that 95%. And I had the opportunity earlier this year to try and test my assumption. This was something that wasn't specifically residential. This was Hilton International Hotels, and I believe this is also part of the Hilton, that organized a design competition to design the luxury hotel room of the future. And so they invited 12 of the top design and architecture firms in North America, people that tended to do really high-end hospitality, but they also tend to be the people that do really high-end residential applications and mansions, because if you look at the level of design that goes into those things, it's actually quite similar. And so you see some examples on the slide of some of the firms that were there. So these were really top firms, people that are at the top of their game. So I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to take part in that and try and learn something from it. And so, other than Lutron, there were no other technology companies involved. And Lutron being involved made a lot of sense to me because, you know, there's switches, there's things like that that are really relevant in design. You know, can you get this switch in brass or copper or whatever it might be? So it's kind of a more logical connection. But when I got to the event, it was really, people got on the Monday morning, they told them, look, this is the size of the hotel room. The design team is the 1920s. You've got 24 hours to design it, and then you have to present your design to a jury. And in the meantime, all the vendors that are here, you can talk to them, you can use everything that they do in your designs. And so this was things like porcelanosa, you know, tiles, fabrics, restoration hardware, furniture, all that kind of thing. And what was obvious to me was that was their community. The architects and designers were really comfortable with these people. They were talking. They were like us at CEDIA, right? I was the strange duck in the pond on the side somewhere, and the first 2 hours nobody came and talked to me, which actually gave me some time to try and design my own hotel room using some of that stuff. And when they finally did come and talk to me, it was with a very strong vibe of, I'm sitting down with you because I've been told I have to sit down with every vendor that's here. And also, I didn't have any cool fabrics or, you know, pieces of furniture or anything else that I could show them. I basically had a round table, much like the one you have, and the laptop. And so I presented something to them because I didn't have a lot of time. So I decided to try and test, okay, can we really turn this from a necessary evil into a design material? You know, how can we make audio, video, all the things that we do into a design material? And so I didn't want to talk too much about technology, so I basically said to them, look, just think of it as an architectural digital canvas, right? Don't think about the technology. Think of it as a canvas that you can create in the home. We can integrate it really nicely, and then you can create an experience on there. Whether it's art, which is a great connection point with that community, whether it's a movie, whatever it might be. So try and think about it that way. And then I said, here's some ideas. Imagine your wonderful 1920s hotel room that you've designed. Imagine if the guest walks in and one wall is Times Square in the 1920s. You know, in those 2 hours, I could go online and get a screen cap from The Great Gatsby and do all of that stuff. So it was actually great in the end that they didn't come talk to me. But so I just gave them some ideas, and then I said, look, that same canvas can then turn into a workspace. You know, maybe the guest needs to have a board meeting in the afternoon. You can use that same canvas to have a board meeting. Maybe in the evening he wants to turn it into a sports bar with some colleagues that he's there with. So I just gave them some ideas. Then I talked about art. You know, new media art is a fantastic opportunity, I think, for our industry, and it's something that I like to talk about. But it's also something that connects very well by nature with the architectural and design community. It's something that is very close to their hearts already. And then I just gave them some impressions. You know, I just showed them some pictures of how you can integrate some of these things, the kind of things that you can do from a design perspective, what the art looks like, these types of things, that you can even projection map a building if you want to with art. This one, I don't know if any of you happen to see this, but this is the Disney Concert Hall in LA that was projection mapped with artwork by Rafik Anadol, who's an amazing artist. But so I just gave them some ideas, and then the first time I started talking about technology was after this whole story. And the way I talked about it was, look, it's not about the technology, this is more of a proof point. I'm just showing you now, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to conceive, this is the kind of stuff that we will use to do it. So this was basically just to tell them, hey, your vision, don't worry. You know, we will have the technologies, we have the partners that will help you do this. So just a proof point. Then I just talked a bit about the type of technology. I talked more about how you integrate some of this stuff from the perspective of, don't worry that you will have to see a big projector, for example. And basically try to tell them, look, at the end of the day, with everything we can do as an industry today, you can hide everything but the experience. So it doesn't have to interfere with your design. And then, 15 hours later, we had the winning design, and the winning design had 3 projection systems in a small hotel room. So in 15 minutes, we went from we don't know what you do to I now designed, or I used 3 projection systems to create experiences in my hotel room, which was amazing. Especially because the second thing that I wanted to try and test was, we have all these luxury condos in places like New York, for example, that are very high value, but not necessarily very large. And people think that they can't do a great experience in there. So I also wanted to prove, if I can do this in a hotel room, I can do this anywhere. And so in 15 hours, we went from, we don't know who you guys are, to being a very important part of the final design, which I thought was amazing. Of course, what was less amazing that all of a sudden we had 3 projection systems in a hotel room that we had to build in 3 months' time because they wanted to build this room for the HD Expo in Las Vegas. But so 3 months later, we had that in there. We were showing them stuff like, look, you can hide, exactly like I mentioned, everything but the experience. You have a relatively small hotel room. You have a huge canvas here, and when you're not using it, it's just a wall. So I thought this was a great way to say, you know what, yeah, they do consider it as a necessary evil, and we can convince them that it is a design material. And if we do this, and we can be part of the conceptual phase of a home, not when everything is almost already done, and we're trying to retrofit stuff in this, then I think we can go quite a long way, actually, in unlocking that 95%. At CEDIA, for example, we had the architect and designer tour for the first time. And we were lucky enough to be part of that. So I also used this kind of discussion with the architects and designers that were on the tour. And also, again, the same experience. Huge untapped potential for us if we do it in the right way. So I think as an industry, to finish, one of our missions should be to create architectural digital canvases that are used to create a variety of entertainment and cultural experiences. And in that also, I've started to talk about, people like to talk about return on investment. If you do a technology investment in a residential environment like we do, and you look at it from a financial perspective, the ROI is terrible, right? If you put in a $500,000 home theater, and in 3 months you take it out and you sell the equipment on the second-hand market, the ROI will be horrendous. But if you start thinking of it as, What about the return on experience, or the ROE? Then it's a different thing. What if you have a $5 million condo and you spend $250,000 on a, let's say, a relaxation room that has new media art in it, that has special sound in it and everything else? You've spent 5% of the value of that home on that system. Now, will that improve your experience of living there by 5% or more? Now, it's not straightforward mathematics, of course, but I would say it can transform the experience of living there by way more than 5%. So ROI, terrible. ROE, best investment you've ever made. So just some ideas on I think, how we can try and unlock for the industry the other 95%, and on some ideas on maybe how we can engage better with the architectural and design community. Thank you.